supporting us to develop the WEF NEXUS project screening and appraisal tool. But unfortunately, he could not make it, so I'm trying to make this presentation on his behalf as well. So in developing the tool, that's where we started, because this is basically our guiding framework. That's the approach of the SADC approach in the SADC region. So what we try to is like trying to consider the inner circle and the outer circle for WEF security and for natural resource use efficiency. Yeah. The main purpose of the whole dialogue process on NEXUS is actually to also facilitate investment. Yeah, to facilitate investment. So I think before we already covered around the structure, the NEXUS framework, but now we wanted to see how the NEXUS approach could also enhance or facilitate investment through developing a kind of tool for NEXUS for project screening and appraisal. So where we started was trying to understand the globally agreed definitions of water security, energy security, and food security. For water security in 2007, it's defined by GWP basically as the availability of an acceptable quantity and quality of water for health, livelihoods, ecosystems, production, coupled with an acceptable level of water-related risks to people, environments, and economy. So it's like water for all kind of thinking. Then for energy security, International Energy Agency, it considers the 3 dimensions of energy, like supply, and also considering the socio-economic dimensions and also environmental dimensions. The same thing, food security definition from FAO, which includes like the availability of actually food security when people have all times the physical, social, economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food, which meets their dietary needs and food preference for an active and healthy life. So these are the globally agreed definitions we wanted to consider, but we try to unpack a bit what we mean by water, energy, food security. That we try to understand the different dimensions. So for water security, we considered about the issue of access to water resources for different users. We also considered sustainable use and management of water resources and resident societies and ecosystem to water-related disasters. So we try to understand, because those dimensions are going actually to the tool as kind of parameters for NEXUS. The same thing with energy security, access to modern energy services, efficient use of energy, clean or renewable energy production and consumption, and the same with food security. Food availability, access, and the quality of the food. So there are the 3 dimensions of WEF security we are considering in the tool. And then we also consider the other dimension from the resource use or natural resource use efficiency. When we say water resource use efficiency, it's like including water resource utilization, resource management, both quality and quantity, and also resource use efficiency. The same with energy, the utilization, the management, and efficiency. Again, utilization, management, and resource use efficiency. So we try to consider both the inner circle of the conceptual framework by considering natural resource use efficiencies, and also by considering the outer circle of WEF security issues. Probably just to have like a very first level of understanding why WEF NEXUS tool is required in the SADC region actually, because we want to understand that one. The first one is the tool, it can help us to screen projects to explore additional opportunities. Like for example, if you have like an irrigation project, so the tool will try to help you if there are other opportunities that you can meet. Probably they may not be actually the original or the main objectives of that investment, but it can also help you to explore if there's also opportunity in your investment. And who will be the users of the tool? I think depending on that framework we agreed before coffee, project owners or project promoters, they can use the tool actually. In the future actually we'll make it like a web-based where you can upload your data information about your project, and then you can get some feedback, quick feedback, whether your project's actually contributing to the NEXUS approach, WEF NEXUS approach. Then the policy decision-making authorities, whether it's a sectoral ministries or the Ministry of Planning and Finance, they can do different kinds of decisions based on the kind of analysis that the tool can provide. And actually, like, you can consider as a NEXUS tool as part of your requirement for approving your investment projects. The same thing finances, not only our international cooperating partners, but the Ministry of Finance, they can also use it as a requirement when they want to finance their projects. For example, if you get a project from the Ministry of Agriculture, then Ministry of Finance can put NEXUS as kind of a requirement so that you can consider other opportunities of the investment from the agriculture sector. So what can the tool do? The tool is intended to assist, like, first one is to identify opportunities, as I said, for WEF NEXUS considerations of project. It can also help in identifying interlinkages between water, energy, food security objectives, and then also identifies the synergies and trade-offs between water, energy, food security objectives. The same thing with trade-offs and synergies between water, energy, land resource use efficiencies. And so it can provide guidance how to appraise projects for meeting WEF NEXUS objectives. So the tool has some kind of guidance actually in terms of how you can use the tool. Let me just quickly move to, it's Excel-based tool for now. It's offline. But we are planning to do it in a web-based kind of tool. So if you have like a long list of projects in the region, for example, or in your respective countries, and then the first thing is like you can do your data entry in the system. Then you try to describe the type of projects. And then the first level of screening, which is a very high level, it's actually, sorry. So the first level of screening is actually, it will give you a kind of like a yes or no kind of screening, whether that project will contribute to water energy or food security, or whether it will contribute to land resource, water resource, or energy resource use efficiency. So it's like yes or no kind of feedback mechanism. Then the second level will give you more of a multi-criteria kind of decision support tool, where you can see the relative contribution of your project to either way energy, water, or food security. So it's like comparing the relative relevance or impact of the project in terms of contribute to WEF security and resource use efficiency. And finally, the last one is more of appraisal, where you can include other kind of parameters before you make your decision, because the level up to this one is like making analysis and assessment based on water, energy, food, NEXUS only, but projects that are good in terms of NEXUS may not necessarily be more effective or more feasible when it comes to prioritizing your investment. So the project appraisal, which considers benefit cost ratio analysis, will help you also to make your final decision. And maybe one thing to show, as you move from here to upward, the level of complexity of the analysis and the data level screening, which we try to see if there are some trade-offs or synergies of your investment. A kind of question in energy use efficiency, and if it's yes, you can consider further investigation. If it's no, you can also consider whether it's like a very big kind of factor for the project to be successful or not. So at this level, you can get a kind of preliminary level of feedback to the project owners, so that you can really redesign your project. So the second level, actually this one is like, as I said, it's yes or no kind of, but there are many questions you have to address trying to screen whether your project contributes to addressing WEF security and resources efficiencies. Then the second level, which requires a bit more data information, is trying to assess the impact of projects from the WEF security and resource efficiency. So in this case, we have to weigh the parameters. I mean, like the first question was, will your project contribute to energy resource use efficiency. And then at this level, we're talking about how much will be its contribution. So we have to weight the parameters. How much will the project contribute to improve energy efficiency? So it will give you a multi-criteria kind of analysis for decision making. So it's like you have many projects, for example, like, so you have different weights. Then you can get for water, because water considering the security dimensions and the resource use dimensions, the same thing with energy, the same thing with food. So finally you can get a relatively different kind of scores for different projects, or within different scenarios for within the same project. So it can show you the relative impact of all Nexus opportunities of screened projects. So here we are comparing how much the different projects can contribute to WEF Nexus, security, and also water, energy, and land resource use efficiency. So the tool can give you like this kind of, is it graph also? I don't know, kind of spider web. So basically it's like you can see like, if you assume like these are the different projects, and then if you take energy score, this project has a higher score when it comes to energy security, yeah? And then another one has for food security. And then you can even, it can give you the whole dimensions of water, energy, food security, and also water, energy, and land resource use efficiency. So you can combine the different parameters together, and you can see which projects can provide you better kind of opportunities in terms of within your similar kind of investment, you can tap the benefits out of your same kind of investment. So this is basically about the Nexus only. Then the last one, because normally you don't want to make a decision only from the Nexus perspective only, but you want to see the other dimensions where the benefit cost ratio will come in, considering other parameters. So the last one is like, if your Nexus score was like this, for example, and then the benefit cost ratio could be like different. So one project which was getting high score in the Nexus assessment may not necessarily be the most feasible in terms of prioritizing an investment. So you need to balance also by considering other criteria. So in summary, it's like the draft tool, we tested it, no, actually we evaluated technically through inviting different technical people last November last year. And then going forward is like, we will organize a workshop, and then we will see further testing the tool. So probably let me also try to see, as we move forward, actually, we try to identify some potential projects for screening using the tool also. So probably I will quickly share with you what projects we have identified so far. And then for that purpose, we developed a kind of guiding criteria. The criteria to identify projects for a high level of WEF Nexus screening. The first one is project objectives. Objectives contributing to WEF Nexus security or water, energy, and land resource efficiency. So we try to more focus around multi-purpose projects which may have more than one objectives. Then key criteria was relevance. When we say relevance is the prioritization, whether that project is prioritized at regional level or national level. And in most of the projects we identified, that is part of the SADC Regional Infrastructure Development Master Plan that we mentioned it in the morning. The third area is potential for WEF Nexus, and then potential to attract funding. That's very useful because the Nexus analysis can actually make some of the projects more feasible, more bankable actually, because if it provides opportunities to bring more partners, like for example, if you have a WASH project, which is basically a social project to provide access to people, because like a basic right, that kind of project can only be financed through grants or like from government budget. But if you combine, if there's an opportunity of bringing in energy as part of your investment, I think the energy component can attract investment from other partners, like including the private sector. So this kind of analysis also Nexus can open up more investors to come in and joining the investment. The climate resilience, sustainable development is another criteria because we have to consider it as part of the inner circle of the framework. Regional transboundary compression, Charles, you mentioned it about the issues about transboundary. I think that's at most of the projects actually, there are more transboundary projects actually. Then other core benefits of the project we considered as a dimensions, including the gender and other social by applying to the different ones. So I will give you a presented yesterday. So for Songwe, if you see it, the first one is, if you can summarize it in terms of, the first one is a multi-purpose dam, which has also other components. It's energy generation, there's a water supply and sanitation component, but it also has a disaster risk management component, particularly like flood protection. So there's also irrigation. So it's and very interesting is it also has an objective of strengthening cooperation transboundary water resource management. So the dimensions of regional and transboundary cooperation. So it's a kind of it's a kind of very good kind of project where you can do your analysis, NEXUS analysis, whether these different objectives, whether they are really conflicting, or one is providing synergy for the other one. So we can do a kind of good kind of analysis. It's a Songwe River between Malawi and Tanzania. It's already presented yesterday. I don't go on the status or the cost, everything. But key is why we picked Songwe is because it's one of the projects identified for implementation under SADC Regional Infrastructure Development Master Plan. That's very useful actually for us. And again, the two countries already committed, including financial contribution for the studies. Actually, yesterday there was a presentation, the level of commitment between the two countries. Potential for NEXUS, I think I already mentioned objects of disaster risk management, water supply, energy, agriculture. So we can do a kind of trade-off analysis and synergies analysis between the different objectives. I think the funding potential, I think the blended financing strategy for actual investment, bringing private, public sector investment, bank loans, development grants. I think FDB's already hired what you call it, public-private partnership kind of transaction advisor, so that you can bring more kind of investors in the project. So it's a kind of one of the projects we identified so that can go to the screening and support further. Then the other projects, I will not go into the details. One is a Batoka. We had already presentation yesterday. It's also in the RADMP, but also it's a PIDA priority project in the first phase of the PIDA, which is also presented yesterday. The Lesotho Highlands, Botswana water transfer, and also Orange Senko investment planning. I think this can also be a very good example actually, like Charles, when you do your integrated river basin multi-sector kind of planning, you can apply the NEXUS approach in the basin-wide investment planning. Then we have many, like in the multi-sector investment opportunity studies in Okavango, they already carried out. So we can also link it in the basin-wide multi-sector investment planning. But we are also interested in the small-scale, livelihood-oriented kind of projects. Credif was very, working on this kind of projects. So we wanted to also see if there could be NEXUS kind of screening for small-scale, multi-purpose or more integrated kind of rural development projects also. Kikonge multi-purpose dam, it's Tanzania. It's another interesting project which has water supply, energy, food security, and also flood control kind of components. Then Mupamtenga, I'm not sure, the hydropower project, that's another project identified. So they're like water supply, particularly for Kinshasa. We wanted to actually test if the application of the tool in the urban project, like Kinshasa particularly. I think that it's part of the integrated urban water management project where they did some pre-feasibility studies. So we wanted to see how the tool can also help us in terms of doing some further analysis. Kobonga, it's also a hydropower project in Lesotho, another hydropower plant. There's a multi-purpose dam in Eswatini also. It's a multi-purpose dam for water supply and food security. And we have also border towns between Mozambique and Eswatini for water supply and sanity. So we try to combine the different types of projects, the different scales of projects, and also try to cover different areas as well. So this is the first level we try to identify. But the workshop we had on Monday, actually, we're receiving also more potential projects from member states. So we will update this list. So what we do is, like in May, we will be organizing a workshop, particularly inviting project owners, those project owners which are already identified now. So we will have a kind of, we'll run the tool by actually testing through the projects, but also we'll have a kind of training. So by that time, we're expecting the tool to be like more converted into a web-based tool so that people can also have the final kind of training. So I think that's what I can do now. Then thank you very much, facilitator. Okay.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, I would like also to open the floor for questions. This is one of the tools that we are going to use if at all implementation of the WEF Nexus is to become a reality, especially when it comes to selecting projects. Does it resonate with us? Is it clear? Do you have questions? The floor is open. Yes, sir. Introduce yourself and your comment or your question, straight to the point.
Thank you. My name is Nathan Mnyaomi from National Oil Company, Tanzania Petroleum Development Corporation. Thank you for taking us through the tool. Mine is just out of curiosity regarding the cost-benefit analysis in the project appraisal. You have mentioned that cost-benefit analysis is the one that's going to determine the final investment decision. But on the other hand, you have said that the feasibility study has to be bankable. To me, for a feasibility study to be bankable, you need to go more, to go further in terms of investment analysis techniques like internal rate of return, net present value, payback period analysis, and so forth. So for the tool to be more meaningful, you need to expound more on that. Otherwise, it will be, to me, as an investment fellow, it will be irrelevant. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Kidan, I'll take a couple more questions and we'll ask you to field them. Of course, colleagues may chip in. Yes, sir. The floor is yours.
Good morning. My name is Lusa Koschali. I'm from the Ministry of Gender, Zambia. My question is, I think I'd like to appreciate the two first and foremost. But my question is, how involved was our gender unit in terms of helping us to look at certain key indicators to inform decision-making in the two? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any more questions and comments? I see that hand. I'll give it to you an opportunity just now. All right. Yes, sir. The floor is yours. Just give us some time to put on our EF pieces.
Thank you. Portuguese again. I'm sorry. Eu apenas tenho comentário em relação à componente da sustentabilidade dos projetos. E queria concordar com o colega que me antecedeu da necessidade de não só olharmos para os benefícios, mas para o tempo, o horizonte temporal e a capacidade de retorno. Isto porque muitos projetos, pelo menos na experiência que já tenho assistido, depois do primeiro financiamento, os projetos morrem. Então, eu acho que era importante, ao avaliarmos essas propostas, considerarmos esta componente de, depois do financiamento, o que é que se pode esperar desses projetos. Muito obrigado.
Right. Thank you so much. Projects should not collapse, and yeah, what should we expect? How do we sustain the projects? Kidan, I'll give you a chance to respond to that, and I'll go back to the audience. If I don't get comments, I may put some people in the spot, or some member states on the spot, to really just tell us what, okay, I've seen that, to really just tell us what they like about the two. Looks like there are no comments, there are no questions. It means it's clear. What is it? Is this really a game changer? What do you like about it? Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the questions. So let me start with the first one. I think the idea is we are not actually promoting to have a Nexus kind of analysis by its own. We wanted to integrate as part of the project processes. Like, so for example, if you are doing your feasibility as study, so you can integrate the Nexus analysis as part of your feasibility studies, whether you can link it as part of your environmental impact assessment or social impact. I think the hydropower project in Batoka, they consider it as part of their own regular assessment. So it should not be like a standalone kind of analysis. That's why we're saying as you progress into the levels, the higher levels of the analysis, it requires a lot of data collection and analysis. So that has to be linked to the feasibility studies and others. So I will definitely agree with the first kind of observation, whether we just do Nexus analysis and do best benefit cost analysis and then make a decision. It's not actually. It has to be linked to the normal kind of appraisal processes, including social, gender analysis, environmental or technical or engineering kind of. So it's one part of decision-making process. Yeah. Maybe I will go to I will skip the gender one. Maybe I will request other people from the room, including Catherine, probably can come in. But for the sustainability of the project, I think it's very useful. The last comment, I think it is also important to understand. I think the first thing is, Nexus is actually an approach and realize the framework. And once we have the tools, the required tools, then it will be part of. Definitely, yeah. In our respective countries, with our policies, national policies or sectoral policies. So now the change is, can you consider the Nexus thinking when you do your policies, when you develop your policies? Or you can do your own sectoral projects. It can be agriculture or hydropower project. So the thinking now is, can you also bring the Nexus dimension when you do your regular process? So that's more of shifting in our thinking in the mindset rather than which requires another structure kind of. Yeah, I will leave it.
All right. The question that is outstanding, colleagues, is I'm now looking at colleagues from the Secretariat. So, Dumisani, please take your seat because I may come to you. It may come to you. Was the gender unit involved in... Was the gender unit involved in the development process of this tool to ensure that issues around women, men, and the youth are integrated? Secretariat? Or anyone who was part of this process? I'd like to know whether gender considerations were adequately ventilated and adequately considered when putting these two together. Kidan, it's being sent back to you. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. So I think, as I try to explain, the process so far, it's more of the technical kind of processes what we covered. So like we're starting to define what's Nexus, what are the different dams. So it's more of the technical process happened up to last November. And now we are like opening up for more kind of engagement, getting feedback, testing the tool, and then actually that's where we are getting more stakeholders to be involved. So far I would say it's more of the technical process which brings more researchers, the academic and research institutions, including from international level. So as we move forward, I think once we started the discussion from here, so we can see how we can engage also in the workshop in May to bring more stakeholders.
Fabulous. Opportunity is there, so not all is lost. Monica, you had your hand up.
Thanks very much. Monica Morrison from Mweri-Wakitso, Botswana. Really interesting development of this tool. I'm curious about whether or not there are plans to communicate the findings of this tool, because they can be quite complex. And there may be people who can influence the success of the projects later on down the line, but that might benefit from a better explanation of how the projects were chosen. Any plans for that?
Good. All right. Thank you. I'll take more questions, Kitan and colleagues, and then we'll ask you to field it. Yes, sir.
Thanks, facilitator. Ashwin Seetal, CSIR.
A bit louder.
Yeah, Ashwin Seetal from the CSIR. Just a quick question with any tool, 3 points, essentially. I think the one you've partially touched on in relation to the formulation of the criteria. To what extent various role players, whether it's gender, youth, you know, beneficiaries in terms of the financial benefits flowing from this were consulted. If not, I think if this is just the prototype tool at this stage, that would be a valuable process to properly inform the criteria that go into this and the respective weightings of the criteria. Secondly, what I didn't see, and as Kedani did say, that this is the first stab at the tool. What I still don't see is the penetration of the tool to actually realize or to measure the benefits on the ground. Because we often talk about the WEF, we talk about the NEXUS, it's still sitting at a fairly high level, a high to medium level. We don't see how this translates to, like I said, ordinary beneficiaries on the ground, households on the ground, they're there. And the third point is...
Last one.
Yeah, the last one is the success of any tool is its implementation. And if nobody takes it up, he's mentioned training, etc. But you'll find that many projects may not have the time or the inclination to start populating a tool to submit to somebody. It might be worth their while as part of the governance structures within SADC to set up, I'll call it a program monitoring unit where this tool is embedded. And as the projects are realized, they can touch base with the project leaders or project managers for those specific projects and actually undertake this assessment and population of the tool. And that becomes part of the feedback mechanism with the outputs from this as well.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. I'll take last comment and then I'll give a chance to field those questions. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is NEXUS Kalinga from TANESCO, Tanzania. Now that we've packed the 3 projects in one, that you have a power project, you have a agricultural food project, and the water project, packed them together. Can the assessment tool be able to establish the size so that we get the proper timing and the proper resource mobilization? Because on average, let's say a hydropower plant takes 5 years. So top up the timing for, let's say, an agricultural project or food project, then water project, pack them together. Can the assessment tool tell this timing and the general, so that you can understand and make the project work out? Otherwise, we can have a project prepared for 5 years, but it requires 20 years to implement it.
Okay, so you're talking about the size of the project?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yep.
Kitan, I'll give you a chance. Issues there around how do we communicate this, extent of consultation, benefits measurement, monitoring feedback, and size of the project. Could you just field those questions? Okay. Is that a hand? I'll get back to you later.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Monica, for that observation. So I think communicating, that's a very useful observation. We already received offer in the before coffee break from Eglen, actually. So we'll work with others regional level kind of partners in terms of how best we can communicate the tool, how can we really make it more available for the users. But a good thing is like, we want to make it very simple, because if it's like complicated, if it's too technical, people will not use it definitely. And people, they don't want to waste another time in terms of delaying their regular project processes. So we'll try to make it as simple as possible, and it has to be very helpful also. If it's not helpful, I will not actually waste my time trying to exercise the tool. So that's very useful. Then any plan for the identified projects, maybe what we do is like, I think when we say this identification of projects, we wanted to test the tool initially, how far it can really help us in trying to test the Nexus approach in the different projects, so that we can get feedback, we can improve it. That's the purpose. But the other important thing is like, if projects are screened through this process, the likelihood of getting more finance would be higher, because it will be like, it will consider the different aspects of combining the partners in terms of to make them more bankable and more feasible, so that they can also attract different kind of investments. So for this project, there would be phase 2, which starts next year with EU support. So we will pick probably 1 or 2 projects out of this one, in terms of moving forward to push them for the investment. But the rest of the projects will be still important in terms of negotiating with your financing partners, so that it will be more, the tool actually will try to make the projects more feasible and bankable. So that's actually the advantage. And then above all, we are seeing it as a kind of system in the SADC structure. For example, if you get any project initiated in the region, this tool should also help you to make it more bankable, so that it can facilitate investment. So that's the whole idea. Then Ashwin, in terms of criteria, the gender use, whether they were considered, I think that's why I'm always keep on saying that this tool is only the Nexus dimension of your project. So all the rest of the assessments are the regular processes. I mean, if you do any project feasibility study, you do the social aspect, which includes gender or job creations, livelihood, displacement of people. Everything is already as part of the regular project appraisal process. So this one is like an additional that can be combined to the feasibility studies level, so that it doesn't affect the existing one, but it's an additional one which you can do it without much investment, but it can actually help you a lot. So when we say like the use case or the gender one, they're already in the social assessment part of the project, the normal project process. And then whether the tool can actually help us to measure what's going on at grassroots level. That's why actually we intentionally picked one project in the list, particularly the livelihood-oriented projects, because if you see the rural areas, actually many of the interventions are more integrated rural development, which combines water, energy, and also agriculture or food security programs. So we wanted to also test if the tool can also help us to make more analysis, because communities in rural areas actually, they need water, energy as basic kind of demand in their daily life. So we intentionally picked particular one project to test if that tool also can be applicable to those kind of projects. And then Ashwin comment again, because I mean, whether that tool will be usable, and then whether it will be successful, that's a very good comment. And he's also proposing to make it as part of the Nexus regional framework or national framework. That's actually what we are trying to do, because we have the framework with a high level of political support and policy support, and then if it's part of a requirement, for example, like in our respective member countries, if there's a Ministry of Finance, which is dealing with the national budget, and Ministry of Planning doing the national development planning, if they can consider Nexus a requirement for budgets or a requirement for sector planning processes, I think that can help. So you have to a bit institutionalize so that it can also help us. I think that's what we can do. And the last one in terms of aggregating the 3 different projects in one. I think I wouldn't say see it from that one. It's the thinking again. You can initiate multipurpose project. This Nexus approach will not influence in terms of the type of projects, because what it brings, like you are free to do your sectoral process or multipurpose project, but the approach will be to bring the thinking so that you can actually attain other objectives of water, energy, or food security out of your similar investment. So it doesn't affect, I wouldn't say that it does affect the project duration and the scale of the project. You can it's an approach where you can apply at any level and also different types of projects.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. You had a hand up that side. I'll give you a chance now.
Thank you, Chair. My intervention is a sort of a clarification combined with a suggestion. I think we're all agreeing that the Nexus is an approach. But when we speak of a tool is usually, in our jargon, something which is deterministic in nature. So there's a gap between the approach and the deterministic nature of the tool when we use a tool. So I think the Nexus is an approach that is used at the beginning of a project. So it's a very high level in the process. And it cannot substitute other tools that we have, like that we have for detailed project design and all that. So I think what is missing is some word of a guideline to support the tool. And that guideline should be used to internalize the Nexus approach whenever we develop a project. I think this is where the difficulty is lying. There's a gap between an approach and a tool. So there's in between the methodology which has to be put in some document that people has to follow when they do the design of the project, so that it's internalized. That similarly as we internalize climate change in our projects. So we take action on climate change by internalizing the concept of climate change. So we have to design our projects, whenever we design it, by internalizing the concept of the concept of Nexus. Okay, and therefore there is an urgent need to complement this tool by some sort of a guideline, which I'm tabling as a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want us to react to that, not just Kidan, but I want us to react to that. Is there a gap between the higher level Nexus and the two? Is there something in between that is required to help us internalize the approach? Are you reacting to this? Are you reacting to this? No. Something else? Something else? Just not, okay, something else, okay. Are you reacting to this? Yes, sir. I just want to exhaust this one.
Thank you.
Have we missed something?
Yes, moderator. I think with every new concept as it's introduced, it brings a lot of hope, and then you have a lot of dreams. But there will always be reality in terms of what is on the ground that needs to be addressed. To me, for every concept as it comes, I think there has to be a buy-in and a clear understanding in terms of what does it entail. Because it doesn't say, do this, but it says, I give you a lot of options so that in terms of the challenges that you face, here is an approach that you can employ to address some of the challenges. So in the reality, when you look at the WEF concept, you may not implement all the 3 components at a time. It may be a journey in terms of what are the needs, what are the resources that you have in terms of moving forward. So for me, I think there are a number of issues that you have. One has to be included. It has to be inclusive, engaging, to enhance coordination and everybody's on board. And until it reaches that grassroots level, I think it has to be a process. And all of us have to see ourselves as the agents of change in all this process.
Okay. So it's a process involving lots of people. I need more, before I go back to you, Kit, I need more reflections on that. I've seen those hands. Let me just check if this side is a bit quiet. Do you think there is a gap or you are happy? I just want to exhaust this because he's raising a point that we need to put to rest. Is there a gap between the approach itself and the two, or we are good? Looks like we're good. Ruth? Yes, I'll get to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Hastings. I like that question because I do think that if we're looking at an enabling environment for the region and for member states and basins, we're looking for an enabling environment for the water, energy, food nexus. There's definitely more components that are needed to really take it forward. So, yes, it was the day before yesterday, actually, I had highlighted that there are different levels. Yes, it's an approach, but there are different levels as to how, different scenarios as to how and when you would like to take the nexus forward. I mean, it can be, yes, at this big regional scale or a continental scale level, but it can be a more, in terms of a policy framework, in terms of can we be more efficient and can we coordinate better when it comes to national planning decisions in terms of an approach to adopt. So that's one level, but then you need to make sure that everyone understands what the nexus is about in the different line units. So there's an element of knowledge and capacity that is required very much in the real living world institutional context. So there is a gap on that. And also, I mean, there's, there's limited resources in this initiative, but there has been a strong focus on the governance and what the status is in the region regarding the nexus and what the countries have found in their respective member states. And then there's been this development of the tool. But in the broader enabling environment, there's definitely a need to, in between the two, for different scenarios to try and beef up that enabling environment. And this is where the capacity development and knowledge sharing and all of that comes in.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Good point. Food for thought as we have this conversation forward. Ashwin, did you guys, were you guys consulting there? How come both of you have a point on this one?
No,
okay.
Not yet. We'll consult shortly.
Okay.
Yes, no, that point that the gentleman raised was actually, as Ruth says, very important because it deals with the two, what I'll call the two extremes in the WEF nexus. One is the conceptual framework and the other one is the implementation. And one has to be very clear about what the purpose of the tool is. And what I've noted here is the tool is intended to, I suppose, and Kedani can clarify this or somebody from SADC, is to measure the realization of the concept. But the question I asked earlier on as to, from an implementation perspective, how far down does that measurement happen? And one of the big issues that comes up, again, should the tool be measuring this at a project level or aggregating data from various projects at a conceptual scale? So we need to be very clear in how the tool is implemented and what its purpose is intended for. Okay. So I think part of the training will be to elucidate all of that. Otherwise, we're going to end up with data and information that becomes nonsense data and could lead us down rabbit holes that we don't want to go to.
Okay. Thank you so much. A good point there, Kidan, for consideration as we go for training. You're reacting to the same, I'll give you a chance, and then after this, I'll just give an opportunity to my colleague at the back for the last input, and we'll close the session. Yes, ma'am, to the point.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I wanted to point to you that, yes, there's a gap, in fact, because the conversation that has been going on around the Nexus approach has been just focusing on the national and supranational scale. And there has been very little that has been done in terms of localizing the scale in terms of the WEF nexus. But this, I want to believe that is solely because that when the concept of nexus was introduced in the first place, it was introduced from the perspective of security, and therefore only speaking to the sustainable development goals. And in my own view, that approach literally undermines certain aspects, particularly the fact that the WEF nexus, is very critical for households and communities. And so in my own view, there is need right there for us to, in looking at the security aspect of the WEF nexus, we also need to look at the fact that down there within the security crisis, there is an issue of distributional justice. So I think in my own view, that is the way the gap lies, yes.
All right, is bringing social justice into this to make sure that we are fair, we are involving all the people that are it is supposed to impact, especially at community level. Okay, before I call on you, sir, can we just get the question here quickly, and then we'll take it from there. Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. My name is Bagnia. I'm from Madagascar. I have just two questions. First, about I think that the explanation by Mr. Kidani, it was clear. But we, everyone, we know that in each country, especially for Madagascar, we work with every international organism, such as World Bank, European Union, and sure that with SADC. So, for example, we have a project who was already funded by, for example, funded by World Bank. And this project respects clearly and surely the criteria about WEF NEXUS and already funded. But the following step of the project is not funded. So we are looking for funding about the following step. For example, for a project for energy, hydropower plants are already finished. And we know that the hydropower plant, it concerns a resource about water and for agriculture. But the transportation is not yet funded. So if you want to ask within the SADC, within this WEF NEXUS, is it possible to have this this benefit within this WEF?
Okay.
That is first. And
quick one.
Within SADC, last question.
Yeah, quick.
SADC, do we have a plan for this year? Like a deadline to submit our project with NEXUS project. We can have this deadline. And the duration for treatment of our project, we have this project to submit with.
All right. Thank you so much. Kidan, do you want to respond to those two questions? And the other issues were really like comments that need to be considered. I don't know whether you want to say anything about it, but you can also elect not to say anything, but just note them for future engagement. You have 1.5 minutes.
Okay. No, thank you very much. I think just more of a general comment. I think particularly whether there is a gap between the approach and the tool. I think what we are trying to do is like, the first thing is NEXUS is an approach, yeah? It's an approach to bring a joint decision making, yeah? So how do you arrive that joint decision where you can bring agriculture, water, energy, and food security people together to agree on a balanced kind of decision? So what does that require is decision has to be informed by some kind of analysis and some kind of knowledge, yeah? So as we try to institutionalize it, the NEXUS approach in the SADC region, we are trying to establish, the first one is a framework for decision making. And then the other component is to support that decision making, we are trying to develop analytical tool on NEXUS so that people will have more informed, analyzed kind of decisions. That's what we are trying to do. So I agree, there is some, we are working, actually I already mentioned it in my presentation, where actually develop some guidelines for member states, guidelines for other implementing entities at different phases of the project. For example, if you are even starting a project idea actually, there could be like a set of guidelines, how do you consider NEXUS in the conceptualization of the project itself. And if you are like making decision for finance or higher level of planning, you can also do similar kind of analysis. We're going to have that guideline again. And if you are doing a feasibility study, we will have also guideline how to consider NEXUS when you do your feasibility study. So we are developing that guidelines. So we are now, the framework is there now draft. We have a draft tool, so we're going to develop a guideline how to kind of implement the two frameworks together.
Okay.
Yeah. Then when it comes to financing, I think I'll make like a general comment. I think it was very clear, but SADC can also comment. The idea is we are identifying projects for NEXUS process and also facilitate investment, actually, to facilitate investment, to make them more bankable, more attractive for investment. So, so it's not the thinking that like countries are expecting like money from SADC right now. It's not like the process. But this process can actually help countries to secure more funding for the investment. I think that should be a kind of understanding we should, but the rest is comment, I think. Yeah.
You note them for the future.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Colleagues, we'll end this session here, and I suggest that we proceed. And for me, as we conclude this dialogue, I just want to challenge you that talk is cheap. Talk is only meaningful if something comes out of it that actually is implemented. We will have wasted our time coming here and share all this information that we have shared if we don't agree on what next, what should be done from here. And really, we didn't come here to celebrate our opportunities on WEF Nexus or mourn again on the challenges that we have. We are here to talk about how do we harness those opportunities to confront the challenges that we are facing in the region. And this next session is our last session. We miss that in this session, then we may as well just conclude that we have wasted our 2 days. So colleagues, we are getting into a dialogue that will focus on way forward, next steps. What is it? What are the practical things that we're going to walk out of this room with and focus on in our different spheres of influence and jurisdictions to make sure that we move forward? And to do that, I have my colleague, Alex Malabwi, Executive Secretary of the Global Water Partnership, to lead us into that dialogue. Can we just give him, I want you to be fired up, Alex, so I want to give a round of applause.
Thank you, Hastings. Thank you, my brother. I was like, Hastings, what is he talking about? Talk is cheap, and he's been talking the last 2 days. You have to talk about good things. So, colleagues, I've been given the task of basically facilitating this last session, where all the issues we've been trying to address and raise, now we need to begin to how do we move forward? What is the next step? So I've got a very high-level distinguished panel, which the way it's been put together is to represent the 3 sectors, water, food, and energy. But because money has been mentioned so many times, and I felt a bit sorry for my colleague Kidane when he kept being asked about money. I'm like, but we don't even have money in GWP. So on the panel, we're going to have a financier as well, and also a youth. So the panel is as follows. And please, if you may come to the front. Esaya from SADC. And then we have Mr. Ramoe Ripera to represent water from the Okavango River Basin Commission. Where is Pera? Yeah, if you may just come to the front. And then we have my colleague from SACRI, Kudakwesh, for energy. Then I think the word planning has been mentioned so many times. We need to harmonize our planning. So we have an economic planner from Mauritius. May you please come to front, Ms. Namarata. The voice of the youth. It's been mentioned so many times, and we're not going to get tired of you. So please come to front, Shamio. So when we started yesterday, I think we introduced the Nexus approach, and I think one of our colleagues reminded us that we are a very rich continent. You remember that slide? It was from one of our colleagues who made the presentations yesterday. We are a very rich continent, but we are poor. And we keep talking about donor money, but look at that amount of resource. So what's the problem? At the same time, we were also reminded that a Nexus development approach is key to unleash the potential of Africa's development, because if you look at the main extraction hubs that were presented yesterday in terms of minerals, you can see those pointing there, those extraction hubs, diamonds in the Congo region, gold, oil, North Africa region as well. These are co-located with transboundary shared waters. In the Congo Basin, we have had conflict for many years. It never ends. Transboundary cooperation, we're always trying to negotiate and negotiate. We have established many agreements, but are the investments actually happening? The youth corridors, in terms of migration, I think we showed that yesterday. If you look at the migration corridors, they come from water-stressed regions in Eastern Africa, the Northern Africa, going into the Mediterranean. So we have all these things where we have the opportunity to implement the Nexus, but we seem to be stuck somewhere. We were also reminded yesterday that we have several challenges. This was presented yesterday, and so some discussions were made around this. The heterogeneity of WEF resources, water, energy, and food resources. They're not exactly the same in terms of, some countries have more endowments in terms of water resources, and some are dry. Namibia was given, for instance, as one country which has a problem in terms of water resources. Botswana has a similar challenge. DRC, very well blessed. Climate change, of course, complicating the issue, and of course, the silo mentality as one of the challenges. Inequality, and also the fact that nations would prefer to take national priorities in terms of sovereignty about food security. Even when one can say, fine, let's grow food in another country where they have resources, it's not happening. Each country wants to grow their own in their own country. They want to develop their own hydropower, their own renewable energy, even when they could cooperate more regionally through a regional approach to develop those resources. National sovereignty takes precedence in most cases. But we are also reminded that youth, many challenges face the youth in terms of limited access to land resources, limited skills, and of course, limited skills and involvement in innovations. And our colleague reminded us yesterday to say at the same time, Africa's population is rising. You can see that chart at the bottom. You remember that slide. In terms of where our population in 2015 is, basically you can see the way the demography is, okay, behind my colleague there, and then look at the projections where we are going to have more older people as we go forward. So we have this youth democratic dividend, but how do we really tap into that? Now, before we start, I'm going to call some few youths who can help us in terms of, just to inspire us in terms of what they're doing. Shamiso, may you please come here? Hastings, as well as my colleague, Lina. Just quickly come. So these are youth who are going to be the one to implement the Nexus approach. All right? So what are they doing? Just very briefly, what you're doing at the moment in your life.
Hi, everybody. My name is Shamiso Kumbarai. I am an engineer in the hydropower space. And really, I work with the fundamental belief that the removal of water is a development constraint, and the ability to harness this resource as a tool to power Africa will really change the lives of millions who call this place home. Thank you.
I'm Hastings Nshane from Malawi. I'm the co-founder of ACADES. ACADES is a network of youth in agribusiness in Malawi with a membership of 3,000 youth farmers. We use a business model where we are promoting youth employment creation and economic empowerment through agribusiness. Our business model focuses on supporting youth farmers through skills development in agribusiness, provision of input loans, and market facilitation. Last year, we launched an youth agribusiness innovation center in Malawi, which works with graduates from technical colleges and universities so that they can fabricate technologies within the agriculture value chains and innovations within the agriculture value chains, where the focus is on agro-processing and value addition, irrigation technology, agriculture technology, but also agriculture waste management. Thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. At the very outset, I would like to recognize the presence of my colleagues from the government of Mauritius. Well, I am Lina, and I am the youth director of a non-governmental organization, the Hale Movement. The Hale Movement has benefited the UN ECOSOC status, and it is a member of the African Union. My non-governmental organization works for the child, young people, and family welfare at national level. As the youth director, I'm responsible for the monitoring of youth projects and implementing it at the regional levels and national levels as well. We young people will work we work in our organization at different topics like youth entrepreneurship, internet safety, child welfare, food security, and helpline counseling service as well. I want to say that we young people, we are action orientated. And I'm going to quote something that John Kennedy said: ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country, unquote. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
A round of applause for the youth. Isn't that inspiring? That's the generation that's going to implement the youth, because some of us are getting gray hair. So colleagues, we've had those challenges. But of course, key to making things happen is financing. Boniface from the African Development Bank, may you please come and join the panel. And now while Boniface is coming, so I'm going to ask each of you to just introduce yourself very briefly for 3 minutes, and they also indicate in terms of what are the key practical steps that can be taken in terms of strategies to implement the Nexus. Because you've had all these challenges. So I'm going to start with my colleague Pera from the water side.
Wow, that was a big surprise. But thank you very much, Alex. As has been introduced, I'm Perara Mwedi. I'm the Executive Secretary of the Okavango River Basin Commission, a commission constituted by the 3 countries of Angola, Botswana, and Namibia along the Okavango River Basin, or what we normally now call Kubango-Okavango River Basin, the COB in short. As we have been hearing for the last 2 days, the issues of WEF as obviously an approach. As river basin organizations, we are established foremost to actually provide advice to our respective member states in relation to the equitable and reasonable utilization of the resources which subsist within the basins of our responsibility. This is a mandate that obviously is guided by the institutions that are subsequently set up to constitute these organizations, and in this case, river basin organizations. As part of our effort to try and do this, and this is where maybe the relevance to the WEF Nexus approach would come, we each as river basin organizations would have basin plans or basin strategies in their various forms. For instance, in the Okavango, we have the Strategic Action Program, which is a plan that we are using to undertake activities within the basin that will support, by and large, livelihoods, water resource management, infrastructure development, and all other aspects of development that the basin may need to give to its people. In other basins, you have the integrated resource management plans, which forms the basis for them to take up activities that they need to do in their respective area of concern. Now, these plans hitherto had not necessarily been looked at through the eye of a WEF. What might need to happen is, since there are some of them in the realm of implementation as we speak, but some of the proposed activities there, we could, particularly for the OCACOM, if we are going to be reviewing our transboundary diagnostic analysis study, which is the basis for the SAP, we might need then to look at it now with another eye of looking at it from the water, energy, and food security nexus. We are not devoid, obviously, in our actions as river basin organizations of these 3 sectors, but it had not probably been looked at specifically in the context that we have been talking about now.
I know that one of the things that has come out of this process is the tool which obviously should be applied across. And if, as river basin organizations, and we have our plans, we might need to also look at ensuring that our plans are looked at through the perspective of a WEF approach, and therefore ensuring that they can actually attract the investment that is normally required. For me, my understanding, and I think this is the understanding that a lot of us probably would have, WEF approach is actually a process that will enhance the quality of projects that you developed with the assurance of the benefits that might accrue from such projects. In the process, making them very attractive for investors, because multi-purpose projects, as opposed to single-purpose projects, have always been seen to be more attractive, particularly because if you look at the water sector, water-related projects have this notion also of social component, which, because of that, may not be very attractive for a private sector to come in and invest. But the moment you bring in issues of other aspects, such as irrigation, which you can get commodities and get economics of things coming out of it, hydropower being coming out of it, it would actually help. So I feel that as one of the way forward, we should internalize these tools and try to see if they can be applied, even at the level of river basins, to make sure that this is done adequately. The governance framework, obviously, as Charles was saying, it is not probably very explicit to indicate where exactly the river basin organizations would be involved, except in the cluster which is shown there of the implementing partners. I feel that we may need to be much more specific in putting this in the structure that is currently proposed in terms of governance. As you'd see, are they going to participate, for instance, in the technical working groups, in the task forces, and some such arrangements? I know by virtue, the representation might be of the same ministers responsible for water from the three countries, maybe not in the context of them being in the nexus. So I think these are some of the things that need to be looked at and try to promote. One thing that needs to still continue being done is go further and further in creating the necessary awareness of this approach, because it's new. Like IRRM, when it started, it had to take quite a lot of doing to make sure that it's well understood and can be implemented and the benefits accrue from the same. I think I'll stop here.
Where I report that the member states don't want plans and plans and plans. That's about action. Now, I'm just wondering, going ahead to review plans and plans and plans. I'm not going to ask you to answer now and defend yourself, but I bet I've noted it. I'll come back to you. Let's go to food. From my colleague, you can go ahead from food to your perspective. Key strategy is very practical in terms of what needs to be done. You can use that one. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. I think since we started on day one, I think there's so much people have learned. Like you said, at the end of the day, people want to see results. In relation to the agricultural sector and food security, we are normally guided in the region by the regional agricultural policy. And when you look at the objectives outlined in there, they basically embrace the concept of WEF. But the question is, at implementation level, how are we moving about it? I think it's also important to realize that the concept as an approach, it highlights two key issues: coordination, development of synergies in the implementation of our programs to realize efficiency in terms of what do we obtain from the resources that we have. And this, to me, it says, as far as planning is concerned, implementation and also monitoring of our programs, we should be working together. And for this to be realized, I think it's important that everybody's on board. And this requires engagement of all stakeholders from all levels, policymakers, communities, non-governmental organizations, civil society organizations as advocates, as well as the private sector to probably help with the investments in all these issues that we dream about. Because when you look at the reality on the ground, most of the time, the issue of silos exists in our workplaces. From departmental level, once you elevate it to the ministry level, it's a problem, let alone when you bring the intersectoral issues. It really becomes a challenge. So I think from the moment we start planning, I think we have to mainstream issues of this concept. Because at times, once people have that common understanding, they will even tell you that, okay, this issue is there, we can see the benefits, but when you ask, why are you not moving that direction? Then the issue of silos, then power, resources will surface. So I think when we implement all this concept, because the benefits are there and very clear, it's a question of how do we bring that common understanding to all of us, so that even at times, because most of the time you'll find that it's government who take the responsibility in terms of funding the programs. So if we have everybody on board, the mobilization of resource can be a teamwork. I think for that, I'll stop there at the moment, and then probably then as the questions come, then I'll...
Okay, thank you very much, Esai. Esai is from the SADC Secretariat, Food Security and Natural Resources Division. I mean, a lot of what you've said, I mean, for me, it's like coordination, awareness. I mean, these things, we've been talking about it with or without the NEXUS. So I'm just wondering, I mean, how do we move that? And it's come through so many times in the group discussions, in our keynote presentation yesterday, the silos. How do we break that? Because, I mean, that's the way government is organized according to sectors. And no one wants to create a super ministry of energy, water, everything, because it's just complicated. So I'm looking for very practical ways. How do we move forward? So I'm going to come back to that, and perhaps our planner from Mauritius can help us on that. But before we go to the planner, let's hear from the energy sector. Kudawa from SACRI.
Thank you, Alex. Good afternoon, everybody. Almost afternoon, yeah. I'm actually one of the youth. Jokes. But I represent a youthful organization. So SACRI is actually a baby. It's almost something like 3 years old, standing for the SADC Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. So as a youthful organization, the establishment of SACRI actually is premised on the basis that we have over 60% of our population that does not have access to clean and affordable energy. We are also in an energy insecure environment. Probably since you came here, probably you've experienced some load shedding already. Okay. So that's a sign of energy insecurity. And our establishment is primarily to contribute to improved access, improved energy security by promoting adoption of renewable energy and energy efficiency. So in a practical way, since we've just come in as SACRI, there are 2 issues that we are already working on to try to fulfill our mandate, as well as, in a way, we're already looking at the NEXUS approach in the implementation of these 2 initiatives. We are looking, as I said, 60% of our population living in rural areas without access to clean and affordable energy. So we're saying renewables, abundant as they are, can play a very significant role to address this challenge. There are some technologies that we're realizing, such as mini-grids. And a number of mini-grids have been developed and deployed, mainly with donor support. And after the deployment of these mini-grids, a few years down the line, you realize that they are not working. the issue of sustainability is missing. And one of the key reasons, one of the key reasons that are given why the mini grids are no longer working is the absence of anchor customers. Normally, the mini grids have been deployed to address the darkness of Africa, to remove that darkness. But what is missing is the use of mini grids for productive use. So what we are saying now as SACRI is we want to promote mini grids for productive use. And for productive use, we're saying the mini grids should be used so that, we identify anchor customers. And the anchor customers in this case are the issues where we have challenges. This is where we have challenges of water, we have challenges of food. So we're saying mini grids then should be used, deployed, so that they can provide energy that is used to pump water. After pumping water, then we can use that, we can grow crops, produce food, process that food, take it to the market. In that process, you're improving livelihood. The end users or the consumers are able to have access, you've got some income, which they can then put back into the sustenance of the mini grids. So this is one area that we're working on, which is looking at the NEXUS approach to promote mini grids. And we hope by this approach, we address a number of sustainable development goals, such as SDG 6, SDG 1 on poverty, SDG 2 on hunger, SDG 3, SDG 5. So that's one area that we're looking into. The second issue that we're looking into is entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship, we see that with bankers here, we also have entrepreneurs and developers amongst, we've seen some youth. The biggest challenge that we realize is youth are always saying that, the entrepreneurs and developers are saying that we have ideas, but we do not have access to funding. But at the same time, then you have funders who are saying we have money, but we are not getting good projects. So we're trying to come in and bridge that gap, where we support entrepreneurs to develop bankable projects that then can be taken up by financial institutions. But also at the same time, we're trying to build the capacity of entrepreneurs so that they can also develop, the capacity of financiers, so that they can also develop appropriate portfolios, appropriate packages that can be taken up by entrepreneurs. So we're looking at in the next, I think probably by May, we're going to launch a call for proposals where we are targeting the youth and women so that we can capacitate, we can support their ideas that they become bankable. So the bias of this call for proposal is towards the youth and women. And we're doing this in partnership with the SADC Secretariat.
How once it becomes much bigger projects, like some of the projects under the PIDA program, under the AU. Look at the Inga in the Congo, the Inga Dam, which combination and complexity that comes with working in Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Water Resources, planning, finance. In practical terms, how does that really happen? I don't have the answers to that. And perhaps our planner from Mauritius can help us, Ms. Rata from Mauritius. What do you think are the concrete steps we can take from a planning perspective to take the NEXUS forward and actually get it implemented?
Greetings, everyone. First, I would like to start with something like when I used to be at university, my friends, seriously, I can be a person connection with regard. So sustainability is more of our concern. Well, Chair, let me now come to an important aspect, and it's economic planning. As far as economic planning is concerned, in Mauritius we are trying to unlock growth potential, which requires strong public investment management framework to develop a cost-effective infrastructure. We have faced significant challenges which led us to confronting a tight trade-off between spending in social entitlement and upgrading our infrastructure. I think a lot of us have this problem now. In the context of limited fiscal space and subdued economic growth, competing policy objectives, we will require increasingly the efficiency to increase the efficiency of public investment. The SADC WEF NEXUS framework tool is indeed a very appropriate tool, but from the Mauritius side, we do have our proposal about the methodology use and how the WEF framework should address the issues of accountability at government level. Would we be able to afford a new NEXUS approach at this point of time, taking into consideration our debt level? I mean, cost implication is everything now. As a date in Mauritius, our strategy would be to integrate the WEF NEXUS approach to first examine our existing system and try to improve the quality of strategy planning by enhancing and adapting to the WEF framework for future projects. So we're not talking about anything new, but adapting it to the existing one. We have to take into consideration that the government of Mauritius have a vision document which provide a consistent overview of the main strategies and investment priorities with clear prioritization and linkage between the sector and projects to which the budget is linked. We are currently fine-tuning our system according to IMF Public Investment Management Assessment recommendations, which does include, to a certain extent, the WEF framework. Now that we are all committed to the WEF NEXUS approach at the level of SADC, we would henceforth integrate it as far as practical in our planning process for mutualizing benefits between different sectors, particularly the energy, water, and food security. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Interesting perspective for us non-finance and non-economists, but very, very interesting to get that perspective. And some of the issues you've mentioned in terms of, going forward, it's quite related to what my brother Pera said about using existing plans and then looking at those from a NEXUS perspective. But what I like about what you say is that you integrate at a strategic planning level. You're talking Ministry of Economic Planning, Ministry of Finance, and that's often the missing link, because at the sector level we do all these nice things, and then when you go to Ministry of Finance, they tell you your budget is A, B, C, D, and they don't understand all this NEXUS issue. So I get that, but the issue of cost implications, you've said debt, this has cost implications, which I think is a contradiction to what I heard earlier, I think from my brothers who were presenting before, that the NEXUS can help to improve efficiencies. So what are cost implications are we talking about here? At the same time, if the NEXUS as a tool can help us to maximize. So we have contradiction that we need to iron out before we leave. Boniface, from a finance perspective, what is your perspective?
Good day, everyone. My name is Boniface Alioboa. I work for the African Development Bank, based in Harare, Zimbabwe. I'm a water and sanitation specialist for the bank, responsible for transboundary multinational operations here in SADC. Your question was cost implications, you asked. But just before that, let me start by introducing the bank and what we do, our strategies, and how this links into our subject matter of today. I'm sure most of you have heard about the bank. You've heard a little bit about our strategies, which are consolidated right now around what we call the high fives. The high fives meaning industrialize Africa, feed Africa, light up and power Africa, improve the lives of Africans, and integrate Africa. And in all of this, you can hear the keywords around integration, around multi-sectoral approaches. We are finding means of supporting our various member countries in terms of economic transformation and integration of the continent. At this very moment, the bank is currently ramping up its net cycle of funding, which is the ADF 13 funding cycle. And one of our pillars there is to invest in quality and sustainable infrastructure to support economic transformation and integration. Having said that, where are we at the moment? I mean, before this meeting, I looked at our indicative operational plan for our next 3 years, just to see what projects there actually reflect our subject of discussion. And surprisingly, we have only 3 projects there. And when I say 3 projects, these are projects that are now ready for preparation for launching and, of course, funding. Over the next 10 years, I guess, we have more projects in the pipeline. We heard yesterday around the Songwe River Basin between Malawi and Tanzania. We know of a project in Mapai Dam in Mozambique. We have the Lesotho-Botswana transfer under Orasecom, and several other projects which are at various stages of pre-feasibility. Now, I mentioned this to say, yes, in order for us to really, tag on to the NEXUS discussion, we've got to get our house in order. We had a lot of the discussion earlier around planning, around, various tools. I take it a little bit, one step back, and it is, how much effort do we put into systematic collection and analysis of basic data, runoff, temperature, humidity, all of which form the very basis of our models for designing what we want to embark upon. And I think we need a lot of work in this regard. I mean, in order to be able to begin to build up concept notes and plans, prepare them for feasibility and also implementation. In terms of whether there are opportunities, there are indeed opportunities. We have a big program on our regional operations in the bank, where we're working with several partners, NEPAD, IPPF, SADC, and the various regional economic councils. And there we're looking around transboundary water operations, transboundary multi-purpose. I mean, we also heard yesterday around the other dam in Zambezi River. And basically, I think we're still very far away, but we are sure that in about 3 years, when all this come to fruition, they will be financed. Your question again was on
cost implications. Many countries have debt, so how can they take on these NEXUS integrated projects when they are so already indebted?
I think there are 2 parts to that question. One is, indeed, we are currently in a very tight space where the resource availability to many countries is quite, limited, which also therefore means that we are limited. I mean, I had the reference to IMF earlier, where we have an IMF definition of your debt to sustainability. Clearly, you cannot over-borrow and become over-indebted, and all of those are sustainability issues. And I think we are quite hopeful that this is just a short spell, and over a few years, most of our countries will be out of that. I was reading yesterday our president and ministers on the continent believing that in the next 10, 15 years, many of our countries will actually be ramping up to middle income status. So that it's awful. But in terms of the issue of whether it creates a burden, I mean, clearly, if you're not able, then clearly you don't do it. I mean, I think we can't go beyond that if you're not able. Because at the end of the day, you've got to pay back these loans which you borrow.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Boniface.
Maybe in closing, let me also just mention this, because I remember you also tagged on here something around youth empowerment. We currently have a call for proposals. I also heard my colleague earlier talk about planning for a call for proposals. We currently have a call for proposal for any project which has elements of youth empowerment, which has elements for, engaging youth. So after this session, if you're interested in looking at it, it closes in about 3 weeks' time. I'll be happy to share that with you. But it has to be a concept that has been prepared, thought through how you would implement it, who you would involve, what entities, what institutions, where you get this, what you require. But, and I think just my final word to say, we should always look out for these opportunities by ensuring that we have all of these requirements in place. The fact that we don't have the money now doesn't stop us from planning, thinking ahead. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for flagging that opportunity as well. Shamil, the youth have been mentioned several times, and you had an interesting speech yesterday. Final reflections in terms of what are the key strategies that are required to mainstream and implement the WEF, making sure that the youth empowerment issues are very much part of that.
All right, thank you so much. And before I can start, I would like to just thank you, sir, for that opportunity that you just presented. I'm pretty sure that we, the youth, we are ready for, we're ready for that. More critical to the resource, to the WEF Nexus approach when we look at the implementation is the resource accessibility and affordability for all sectors, particularly the youth and women. And we need to consider this looking at the fact that we're faced with population growth, economic development, urbanization, and the changing consumer habits. And in our view, those are some of the issues that we need to look into when we're looking at implementing the Nexus approach. I'm specifically saying this because earlier on I commented to say that the debate or the conversation around the WEF Nexus have been mostly on the national and supranational scales, and therefore we need to calm down and localize the debate. But most importantly, this gives us an opportunity to ensure that we apply local solutions and decentralize our approaches in order for us to include the social aspects, which in most cases or in all the times touches the aspect of youth and women and children as usual. For us as the youth, there has been defragmentation of the existing practitioner literature on the implications of the WEF Nexus, particularly when we're looking at the local levels. And we do recommend that we need to look into research-based evidence where the youth literally are on that space, and that is going beyond the quantitative input and output analysis, and we require that in order to support further development of comprehensive WEF Nexus analysis approaches, which one of the colleagues from the WP actually mentioned earlier on. Also, we need to develop integrated software platforms and tools for systematic analysis of the WEF Nexus. That is to literally involve the youth who are already in the ICT sector for them to come up with integrated software platforms for the analysis of the WEF Nexus. An example could be the integrated water resource management in hydrological communities, and we could use this as an example. Some of my colleagues there who already have existing solutions for that, and then also in Malawi there's a gentleman who's running an organization called iMoses. They have a water solution in terms of that software. Those are some of the solutions that we need to look into. We need to scale them up to ensure that all our, they're part of the WEF Nexus. In conclusion, maybe not, I would like to say that we need to zoom in to local specific scale, especially young people's everyday lives. You know, when we're looking at the WEF Nexus, we need to go down and see what it is that the youth, the women, are facing in terms of integrating the WEF Nexus approach in what already has been done. And for that, we need to integrate digital, big data, and volunteer graphic information to visualize the multiple scales of the WEF Nexus simultaneously. There's a point actually that I wanted to write home, and that is on, for us to, one of the biggest challenges that has been spoken of regarding the WEF Nexus approach has been, you know, the trade-offs. And for us, in my view, for us to be able to avoid the trade-offs and for us to enhance the development potential of the energy projects, I will recommend a systematic approach to integrate the water and food pillars in energy planning, which is something that is quite missing at the national levels. On a policy perspective, I cannot leave that out because the youth are the ones who are suffering. Youth and women and children are the ones who are suffering when it comes to being mainstreamed on policy development and so I would I recommend that we need, there's a lot that needs to be done in fostering policy coherence and for us to be able to encourage cooperation between the ministries and the stakeholders. I mentioned this yesterday for a particular purpose because we need to start incentivizing the effective production and consumption of the process from the WEF Nexus. So yeah, so in my view, that is it. And yeah, we're ready as the youth. We're very ready. We just need you to build our competence.
Thank you. I think the youth deserve a round of applause. Don't you want to give a round of applause? Professor Ashwin, that's what I call him now, from yesterday. He gave us an interesting presentation about what's going to happen in the future, some of the jobs that will be lost. The integration of big data, digital platform, intelligence, artificial intelligence, all these nice things that are actually happening, by the way, right now in most of the developed countries. And I like that you've touched on that point, the integration of the youth in ICT, because the youth we have here, they were chosen by the countries based on the 3 sectors, water, energy, food, not based on some of the emerging technologies in terms of the emerging cross-cutting issues, because you can't put these issues in this. I mean, it's like Uber. Most of us know what Uber is. I mean, Uber has faced huge challenges about regulation, and when they are taken to court, they say, but we can't be subject to an ICT policy for regulation, because we are not an ICT company. We're a media company. That's what they say. We're a media company. So there is this narrowing across across different silos that's narrowing. So I love that you've touched on that point. Colleagues, I'm still really not convinced about the key strategies for implementing the Nexus. I think our colleagues have really fleshed out some of them. Your point about integrating water into energy planning. If I'm the director of water, I'm like, now I should start reporting to my energy guy, right? That's what you're saying, right? That's what she means, right? If I'm the Minister of Energy now, water, I should now, or there should be no Minister of Water, right? Or there should be no Minister of Water. You don't need to answer. There are a lot of policy implications, right? What are the key strategies that we can actually have to actually get the Nexus approach implemented? This is your chance now. Please don't give challenges, just give practical strategies. And as concise as possible. Anybody who wants to take the floor? Yes, my sister there. If you can just introduce yourself as well.
I will speak Portuguese.
She will speak Portuguese, so if you can just have your... You can go ahead.
O meu comentário não é basicamente tomada de decisão, mas eu sou a Bela Julieta, do Instituto Nacional de Recursos Hídricos, de Angola.
Yes, continue.
Okay. dizia que o meu comentário não é basicamente para a questão de uma decisão, mas desde ontem que tenho a imagem que projetou primeiro esta sobre os recursos minerais que a África tem. E fiquei a pensar de que forma poderíamos trabalhar para podermos ultrapassar a questão da pobreza em África. Esta imagem ilustra-nos que o continente africano é rico em bastantes minerais e pobre ao mesmo tempo, porque enriquece os outros continentes. E com a e que o NEXUS venha a criar as áreas rurais que até esse preciso momento não têm água, nem energia, nem alimentos. Obrigada.
Thank you. Thank you. I think the key point of what my sister has mentioned is using innovation, using the different technologies and empowering the youth and really tapping into the youth to make sure that these solutions can be brought forward to address the challenges that we have, particularly that we are a very rich continent. But of course we have borders, country borders that sometimes we fight over, and they were decided in Berlin in Germany. Okay? And we have these borders. Anybody who want to comment? Practical solutions, yes?
Je vais parler en français.
Parler français?
Oui. Je pense que pour mieux sauvegarder et mieux connecter l'approche Nexus, déjà, il faut prendre en compte que les pays membres ont des politiques nationales à qui il faut aussi prendre en compte. Donc je pense que si on arrive à adapter cette approche Nexus avec les politiques nationales de développement que nous avons dans nos pays, nous pouvons bien entendu intégrer ces recommandations et développer ce programme. Secondo, nous les représentants de la jeunesse, nous travaillons bien entendu avec des différentes plateformes au sein de nos pays. Il y a des associations, il y a des organisations. Donc je pense aussi que si on arrive à mettre en place un plan de communication, à sensibiliser les femmes, les jeunes et les organisations que nous travaillons à l'intérieur, nous pouvons bien entendu faire passer le message, parce que nous savons très bien que à présent, les jeunes, les femmes, on peut influencer les membres du gouvernement, on peut même les sensibiliser à s'approprier du programme et à contribuer davantage pour le développement de ce programme. Voilà, c'était juste une intervention et les deux stratégies que nous pouvons mettre en place pour développer l'approche Nexus.
Thank you very much. Adapting the Nexus into national processes and national frameworks.
Is that the SADC summit, where the head of, maybe it's also a high time if some of the recommendations from this meeting can also be taken on board, and the Nexus approach can be discussed as one of the sub-theme or a theme there. It will be nice because the decision makers, they are there. That's my recommendations. And a question is on about the bankable projects. When we are talking about bankable project, what does this mean? Because are we mean the loans or grants? If it's loans, then we need to be very clear what kind of the collaterals for youth. Because this is a very problematic when it comes to collateral. And also interest rates are very high. You cannot run a project with the bank interest rates. Unless otherwise they will sell your house. If it's grants, also let's be very clear. What will be the returns for the banks? Because sometimes we end up signing documents thinking they are grants, but they are loans. So we also must be very, 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 very aware. Those cases are there in rural areas. We'll find people say, oh, this was a grant. No. You didn't read the documents. You see, it's a loan. It's supposed to return back the money. So let's be very clear. When you are saying bankable projects, If we really want to help the youth, bankable projects must be very, 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 very clear to us that this money, will you return it or is just a grant? Go and we are helping you to develop. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emmanuel. From Tanzania, very concerned youth. Youth collateral damage. You contract loans, they will have to pay for it, right? Yeah, but thank you very much for that contribution. So our colleague from Ministry of Finance, Economic Planning, Sirata, and my colleague Boniface, do you want to say anything on that? The issue of bankable projects. And then if you can relate that to the NEXUS and the loans and the grants issue that has been raised. Mr. Rata, and then Boniface.
Well, I think the guy is right on what he said, because there's a lot of time when we tend to think that it's a grant, but you have a portion of it that is a grant and a portion of it that goes into loan, which affects our debt generally. So basically, it's up to this guy to say if he's going to give us the grant or it's just that we have to return the money.
Boniface?
Okay, thank you. Now it's a good question around what does it mean when we mention bankability. But he was asking the question from the perspective of the youth, so not the perspective of a country or an entity. So let's look at it as a youth. So I think basically as youth, we'll be looking also in the category of small and medium enterprise. And in that sense, I must say there are lots of facilities on the continent. We as a bank also, you know, parcel out loans to, there are specialized banks in different countries, and also some of the commercial banks for SMMEs. And they often come in two portions, one for your capital projects and the other around technical assistance. So basically technical assistance to say, we're not all called to be business people. Some of us can't keep records. Some of us can't really maintain our assets. So you need some bit of training and checks to see whether you have that calling, whether you understand the need to have your accounting team, to have your procurement team, how you do your bookkeeping, you know. Because at the end of the day, we're spending public funds. And for public funds, we are accountable to the owners, those who have provided the funds, which is why you have to give account of how you've used them. You're right, there are grants and there are loans. But many of these loans for the SME sectors really do not carry huge interest rates. What I think the challenges are around governance, around awareness. Do we know about what is available in our countries and which institutions have the resources to support us? I think we should start from there to find out. And whether indeed those that actually have the calling, those that have the plans and zeal are getting what has been earmarked for them rather than just giving it out to people who will spend it on other factors. So I don't know if you're comfortable with my answer, but that is really what I thought I should just chip in. Thank you.
Thank you, Boniface. My brother Moses from SADC.
Mine is a comment actually even to support my colleague from SADC in the panel. Or this, the issue of involvement of youth at summit. As my colleague may be aware that the theme that we are implementing from summit is on promoting infrastructure development and youth empowerment for sustainable development. So in the next summit, the Secretariat will report or give feedback as to what they undertaken and the activities that were undertaken to implement this theme. And I've been duly guided that youth will be involved in order as part of the feedback to the next summit. So this will be a table for the summit. He must be rest assured that this will be covered in the next summit, my colleague. Thank you.
Perfect. Concrete answer and response given over there. A round of applause for that, please. Idani? And then Remy, who else has a hand? I'm trying to see how many people want to comment. You have Kidani, Remy, and my brother over there. Yes?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you for the panel. I have just one question for the Ministry of Finance and the African Development Bank. I just want to get it very clear, because the Ministry of Finance at national level, you're sitting in terms of making decisions when it comes to budget or financing your investment, and also coordinating the national financing system at national level, including getting loan or grant anything. So you have that power of making decision. And then the FDB is like Africa's partner for when it comes to financing development in Africa. So it's just a partner. I just want to clearly understand whether you really appreciate the NEXUS approach, and if you would be, whether it will help you in terms of making decision as a approach, so that you can help countries to make more sustainable kind of investment and facilitate investment. I just want to make it more specific if FDB is really trying to work around, develop some kind of guidelines around the NEXUS approach, because it can be challenging. If you remember the environmental issues as part of requirement, it came from the civil society, pressing the donors actually to develop some kind of safeguards. The same thing with social issues actually. And then now the finance partners put a kind of tool to make sure that social and environmental safeguards are also considered in the loan or the grant process. So similarly, if there is any kind of process going on in terms of bringing the NEXUS as part of your decision-making process. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So before you respond, let's take the other two questions, comments. Remy, and then my brother next over there.
Thank you very much, once again, moderator. I think now that we are focusing on the way forward, we've had quite a lot of discourse around the NEXUS and the youth involvement. And probably in implementation of the projects that that can be identified under the NEXUS, it's important that we take that to where the action is. I think just bearing in mind that the current SADC focus is on industrialization, and by industrialization, I think according to the strategic focus, it's focusing on infrastructure to catalyze industrialization. It's focusing on food security, particularly the RAP and the RAIP, that is the Regional Agricultural Policy and the Regional Agricultural Investment Program. I think we do have already structures that are also operating within that sphere. So it is important that we inculcate the whole issue of the NEXUS and the youth within that framework. One of the important issues I think the Secretary can confirm is that we do have the science, technology and innovation cluster, which is an integral part of the whole idea of industrialization. And I think this is also a very good entry point, particularly for the youth. And I think the youth are way ahead of us when it comes to issues around that, because most of us are BBCs. So I think we do have an opportunity for the youth to really find an entry point. I think the other significant aspect is that because this is really the strategic focus around which the financing of SADC is being crafted, particularly when it comes to the Regional Development Fund. So it basically also addresses the very issue of funding of these projects. So I would like to say that probably as one of our actions, we could closely look at the whole issue of the industrialization as ground that we can use, again, to have a reality check of the NEXUS and the youth development. Thank you.
What is BBC? What? Born for computers. Born before computers. How many of us are BBCs? Oh my gosh, you have so many BBCs here. All right. My brother, your comment?
Thank you. Mine, that's the contribution. I'm Gerard Kiwale from Seychelles. Follow what has been said. Actually, I think, and I'm sorry, I'm talking as a policeman and also gender. I think if we want really to incorporate WEF NEXUS as the way forward, we need to change our mindset. Yesterday we heard about fourth revolution, industrial revolution. But for the fourth industrial revolution to take place, mindset must be changed because we do have so many impediments. And the lady who is representing EU Youth Club has pointed some of this. We have some traditions which they impede even the women to participate or to be involved in these issues we are talking about. And we know some of them. Unless we clear up all this, still we'll have problem of holistic development when it comes to gender issues which are lagging us behind. For the young people, it's the same. The young people, they are quite ahead of us. And we are talking of dam, we are talking of irrigation, we are talking of, there are some issues we are talking of, which I think we have to take them at another level steps. We need to have mindset which is now maybe focused on high tech in the first place. And we have to create an enabling environment where women and the youth can find it clear directly without any quota system or without saying we want this group and this group to enter. This environment to be introduced by the system we have and also the way we think, the way we do things. Just to finish. We saw what we presented as the something rich in Africa, okay? But we coming from the Seychelles, saying we are talking of coffee in Madagascar and what have you, we are forgetting the ocean, which also is part of SADC. We are surrounded by Indian Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, and it is a very big resource which we have to tap in and to see how we can deal with. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. We'll be coming to the closing very soon. So I'll only allow, who else wants to speak? Okay, only two for now. So my colleague there, and then we have our youth there. And then the panel is going to respond and give their closing arguments. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. When I look at the panel discussion heading, it's what is next? But it's not very clear to me what is next. I've not been able to capture what is next. So what I'm suggesting, it would seem from the discussions we have had for the last 3 days, we have three very important instruments that we need to put in place. It's the governance framework, it's the guidelines. Now there seems to be general agreement that there's a guideline missing, and the final tool which has to be finalized, and we've heard that there is a May workshop. Also, in my view, that these three instruments have to have the political blessing through the SADC process. And here I think the question is the Secretariat. How realistic can we put these three tools if we agree that we have to put this? Therefore, we need a clear timeline. Over which timeline are we to put these three instruments through the political process of SADC so that we have it at our end at the level of member states and we can start internalizing this nexus concept in the next projects, in the future projects that are coming. I think this timeline is very important so that it's clear to us when we go out of this room, when we expect to start having the formal blessing of these guidelines for the political process, that we can start internalizing in as far as practical in the future projects that we implement in our member states. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I like what you say in terms of having very clear timelines. Before I come to Moses, I hope you can also speak to that. You are sitting next to the director there, so we want a very clear, concrete next steps.
Yes. Thank you very much, Moderator. Yes, thanks very much for that comment from Mauritius to Dr. Sunaran. And as you know, the SADC function operated through the structures, decision-making structures. And these structures are informed from technical level up to highest decision-making bodies, which is summit. So from here, we are going to hold our sectoral and ministerial meetings, which are normally presided, or usually presided by the senior officials meetings. So water, and Energy will hold their meetings towards the end of May, and Food and Security related ministers will hold their meetings also towards the end of May. So this will be, the outcome of this will be tabled to ministers for consideration and approval as usual. And if there's a need be, this will further be taken to council. As you may be aware that further to ministerial decisions that were taken last year, council also endorsed those decisions that were taken by the sectoral ministers from the 3 sectors. So this is how the process is going to take shape from now on.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's very, very clear in terms of so we are operating through the political process, and SADC has a very clear vision of how this is going to move. And I think that answers the issue of, that came from Tanzania in terms of having the youth and the Nexus at the summit. So we have one last comment from our youth there again. Just introduce yourself again.
Thank you very much. My name is Sikhamet Lamini from the Kingdom of Eswatini. I think the WEF Nexus is a very good concept, but I'm of the notion that it is not futuristic. I, for one, would have said in this team, embracing the fourth industrial revolution towards the WEF Nexus, towards water, energy, and food security for the region, and towards youth development and youth empowerment. Because I believe we are moving slow towards development of technology, and we should be embracing that before we can say we are going to be able to ensure the water and energy food security. Thank you.
Wow. So we had 2 days, and we've just been taught by our youth from Eswatini, working in agribusiness, ICT, internet security, although we were doing a lot of other things that you told me about. We are discussing something that is in the past. It's not futuristic. How does that feel? Do you waste our time? The panel, please help us. Save face, starting with Boniface. You have a minute to just give your closing arguments, responding to the key issue that's put on the table, but also the question that Kidani raised on the issue of the guidelines for Nexus by banks.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that question was quite direct, but I thought in answering the question, let me provide some bit of background. You will realize that every country actually determines its own path in terms of development objectives. Not too long ago, we had our PRSPs, if you still remember them, the Poverty Reduction Strategy Papers. And then today, we all have our national development plans. We as development financiers are simply enablers and partners of government. So we come on board to enable those trajectories that have been planned and set, and we partner and make them happen. So, but in terms of the fact, so I don't think we really need to end. What we will then do is explain the parameters around which our fundings will apply and what our funding will not apply, to. And, but I think one of the challenges, I hope we don't have this confusion around the Nexus. When we stick in Nexus, let's also remember scale. You can have the Nexus apply to small projects, community-based, and we have some which the bank is supporting through our African Water Facility here in South Africa, and of course the mega projects. The essential thing is how do you bring in all those factors for jobs for your youths, addressing food insecurity, addressing your energy deficit. How do you bring them into this? I think that really is the way we go and work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Boniface. You still have not answered that issue. Don't answer it. You don't answer it. You still have your colleagues, they're going to help you. Srirata from Mauritius, we have 2 issues on the table.
Well, from the Ministry of Finance, we are in Mauritius, actually. We are already looking at projects that are intercorrelated. Like
if you can just put your mic close.
We are already looking at projects that are intercorrelated, have certain intercorrelation. And exactly like the NEXUS, WEF, However, we do have our priority projects, a list of priorities that we already have. And it's also, it depends on the government vision too. And if the Nexus project is within this direction, then we're definitely going to take it into consideration and put it in our pipeline of projects. As I had an example, like we already have a house, but someone come with a proposal of having a house with a solar panel and water. We have a spring in the nearby, so you don't have to pay electricity, you don't have to pay water, and you already have a garden. I mean, the concept is great. It's a beautiful concept. But do we have the money to pay for it? Because I already have a house. So now you're asking me to bring out a beautiful project. It looks great, everything perfect. But it depends if we have the money to do it. And if we are willing to take a loan. But if we do get a grant, definitely we're going to go for it.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Mr. Lamoel, you still also need to answer my question around the issue of reviewing existing plans from the Nexus angle.
Yes, I'd actually like to delve into that issue of cost as it relates to WEF, which in my own perception is actually supposed to be reducing your cost by doing things integratedly, and therefore instead of doing one water project and one irrigation project or one agriculture project and an energy project, if you do them with the approach of WEF from the onset, it becomes a cheaper approach than what you would otherwise get. Look, I think the issue of plans that I had to emphasize was just to draw your attention to the fact that we're not operating in vacuum. We operate because there are those things that the countries that subsist or that constitute these institutions have agreed on as ways of developing their basin. So it's inevitable that we have to look at those and improve on them and enhance them to make sure that they are now addressing the specific issues that are required and important in respect of Nexus. And I think it's in that context that one should look at the whole approach. I think there's a lot of opportunity and scope for river basin organizations, for instance, to be the drivers behind this whole process, because it becomes a very classical unit of management, particularly in terms of water, because water in this region is almost invariably, extensively a shared resource. And it's inevitable that in order to use it in a way that would avoid conflict and other negatives, you have to do it in that context of a basin as a unit of management. So I think we have a role to play, but going forward, I still maintain we still have to make sure that this thing is integrated at the best in our planning, and make sure that our plans, when we implement them, have taken this on board.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ore. Kutakwash?
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. Two things. I think going forward, what I would say going forward is let's go and implement. I think we are doing the planning, which is very good, but what is very critical is for us to implement. We implement, and then we plan for perfection of that implementation. So it's a cycle. Let's not shy away from trying and failing. It is through that we can then perfect the art of doing things. Then secondly, let's embrace technology. Let's embrace technology, the youth and women dividend that we have, so that we ensure livelihood improvement in the region through the WEF Nexus approach. So for the youth, yes, you are at the advanced stage in terms of technology. So don't shy away from making your demands known. It is through you, the youth, that there's improvement, that we embrace technology so that then you can improve what we're doing through the WEF. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Embracing technology and innovation. Esa?
Thank you very much. I think, to me, it's a process would make progress and success in the implementation of this, because there are times when you can have a very good concept in terms of how you sell it, it can even fail before you start it. So noting all the levels
of categories of people that we have to sell this. We have to package information accordingly. Sometimes we have to drop these technical jargons and probably talk in terms of implication. What does NEXUS mean to our lives? What does it mean to an ordinary person? Because at the end of the day, we want to see all SADC citizens moving together, growing together, and that would be a very good move. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for those comprehensive remarks from a very SADC perspective. So SADC is getting NEXUSized, as we have been trying to also be getting NEXUSized in these 2 days. Shamil, this conference is resting on your shoulders. Give us a resounding send-off. How do we make sure that the NEXUS is futuristic? That's the question that your colleague has put forward. You have the closing argument.
In closing, I'd like to say that we are not your threat. We are an opportunity that you need to embrace. Going forward in embracing or implementing the WEF NEXUS approach, it's up to you, your willingness to involve the youth in the processes. But also in closing, I'd like to recommend to SADC to say that security is not the only important variable in the NEXUS approach, particularly when we're looking at scaling it down or localizing the approach. You need to frame the WEF sustainability as both a matter of security and distributional justice. Because at the end of the day, if the youth, the women, and people at grassroots level are not able to access the resources, the water, energy, and food security resources, then also if they're not able to afford the WEF resources, it means that you still, you wouldn't have solved the security aspect of it. So let us look at both the security and the distributional justice of the WEF sector. Thank you.
Colleagues, a round of applause for the panel. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, now I've just been asked to make an announcement. The youth this afternoon will continue to showcase what they have been trying to do and what they're doing. It's an optional event. Those of you available should be able to attend. So there's going to be a youth event, but before that, there is going to be an event around the disaster that we have had in the region around the Cyclone Ida. So I've been requested by SADC to make that an announcement. This is start from 2 p.m., right? From 2 p.m. A discussion around Cyclone Ida and what is our response. We're all here. And then the youth event to showcase their work, their innovation, and how they are going to make sure that the NEXUS approach becomes futuristic. Colleagues, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Alex, for providing oversight on the conversation. Colleagues, we are coming to the conclusion of our dialogue. And what I would like to do is to, before I hand over to our principals to close, I would like to just share with you what we feel are some of the things that have been made clear during our discussions, and things that we should not omit in the outcomes document, which will be finalized and will be shared. But before I do that, let me just get rid of the papers here by making some announcements. There is a lost but found package here. If you can identify this, please just see the organizers or see me. And it's a very interesting book on transboundary water management. evaluation forms have been placed on your desks. Please attend to them. This is the 9th in a series of dialogues. And the SADC Secretariat, as well as the implementing partner, Global Water Partnership, strive to always improve how we deliver on these events. So please take some time to fill in the evaluation forms, give us ideas on where we should do better and what aspects we should maintain. The idea is that you should complete before you leave the room, and when you hand in your evaluation form, you'll be given a flash disk that has all the presentations from 25th of March. So please do that and get those resources. Okay. We came here to share ideas, and we would like to leave this place prepared to promote and implement water, energy, food nexus, and youth empowerment for sustainable development. I would like to highlight some of the things that have been really emphasized in this room. And colleagues are capturing them, really drafting them properly, and an official document will be shared. But it has become clear that it's no longer business as usual. We need to go back, leave this room, and review our plans, our strategies, and our activities in our respective fields of influence, and be able to apply a WEF lens and, where possible, revise and integrate water, energy, efficiency, nexus aspects. And we need to make sure that we are increasing efficiency of public investment and improving the quality of planning itself by using the tools, the frameworks that have been shared in this room to adapt existing plans, strategies, and activities, including integrating into existing budget planning processes to realize the benefits of the WEF nexus in all sectors. There is need, when we get out of this room, for the 3 sectors to begin to coordinate even more and jointly plan and monitor their programs in order to realize the efficiencies the nexus approach presents. It has been clear in here that implementing the nexus approach needs to be an inclusive process that includes different stakeholders, including the youth, women, private sector, and all marginalized groups. So when we go back, we need to also do a bit of a reality check and self-introspection and see how we managed to integrate these groups in the first place and what sort of corrective measures need to be made. There is need to integrate the nexus approach in strategic development planning processes at the national level, so that this should not just something that hangs at regional level, and when we go back to our respective member states, it's business as usual. So we also need to go back and review the structures, platforms, and mechanisms that are there that can help us domesticate the WEF nexus approach based on the agreements or consensus, or based on the points or agreements that have been made in regional platforms such as this. The NEXUS approach offers an opportunity for fundraising, opportunity for seeking financing, and we need to really map out the funding or financing opportunities that are in the region and see how we can use the NEXUS approach to tap into that. For example, there is an opportunity for the NEXUS approach to actually be kind of like an option for implementing the African Development Bank's high fives. And there are several other funding agencies that actually the NEXUS approach can link to, and we need to identify that going forward. We need that were shared in this room, however, large-scale projects such as the PIDA project. In other words, let's not just have isolated where something is working, let's upscale it and let others learn and benefit from it. Using existing entry points, let's ensure that the NEXUS and youth issues are integrated into the industrialization agenda, which is focusing on infrastructure, agriculture, and gives an opportunity for NEXUS and youth empowerment to be implemented. Science and innovation cluster is also a good entry point for the youth empowerment, taking into account all the points and issues that were raised under the fourth industrial revolution. I will proceed and transition to the other area that we're focusing on, which was on youth empowerment. And as we get out of this room, we need to leave recognizing some of the challenges that our youthful colleagues were able to share with us. They were asked to cry, and they really did. Clearly shared with us that they feel, sometimes they feel neglected, excluded, voiceless, and powerless. As we go out, we also need to be cognizant of the fact that the youth encounter a lot of red tape in trying to move from the informal sector to the formal sector. And the youth are finding greater difficulty in accessing financing for some of the innovation projects that they are doing. There's an example from Malawi where that was shared at the beginning of the dialogue, where about 3,000 young people are involved in the agricultural sector. Where do they get the financing? So, to address some of the things going forward, we need in our respective sectors to really begin to increase apprenticeship opportunities and skills development as a way of upskilling the youth in our respective countries and in the region. The youth, they feel ready. They feel energized to actually play a role in the WEF NEXUS, but they need to be mentored and they need to be groomed. And going forward, we need to make that happen. We need to make sure that as we use these tools like the PIDA job creation tools and the WEF tools, we need to make sure that issues of gender, disaggregated data, issues of youth empowerment are adequately covered. Then we need to also engage with the education sector in our respective countries to make sure that there is deliberate effort to reform the education, to address the mismatch between the education system and the skills that the youth need for them to actually play a meaningful and active role in the WEF NEXUS process. Yes, we can have all these plans and strategies, but when we go out of this room, ladies and gentlemen, we need to make sure that there are mechanisms for actually monitoring and reporting progress in terms of what we are achieving in actually implementing the WEF NEXUS, and of course also involving the youth in that process. SADC and SADC member states and the international cooperating partners that are in this room are being called upon to be more proactive and develop approaches that are gender sensitive and cater for the needs of women, youth, people with disabilities, and other vulnerable groups. And one of the things that we should also focus on is to develop the capacity of these marginalized and vulnerable groups to be able to develop projects on their own, and those projects must be bankable. So colleagues, the outcome document will be produced and will be more detailed, but those are some of the things that have been clear coming from the conversation we have had in these 1.5 days. I would like, therefore, to urge all of you to continue with the momentum that you have demonstrated in this room, so that the conversations that we have had in the past 4 dialogues on water, energy, and food nexus really deliver impact on the ground. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to really offer my sincere gratitude for your participation in this dialogue, and really for the commitment you actually gave, the energy you gave to the conversation, to the conversations in this room. As a facilitator, and I think the other will continue, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to suggest that we give ourselves our round. All right, excuse me. Before I hand over to our principals to do the closing ceremony, you bear with me. For those of you that didn't know, I haven't been feeling well, but I would like to really thank you for the support you have given me yesterday and today. Maybe that's why you didn't notice that I was not very well. But you know, I really appreciate the knowledge that is in this room. I had more concoctions and to choose from, which was very good. So thank you so much for the care. Thank you so much for the love that you gave me yesterday and today. More announcements. Kindly clear all bills on your room. Don't leave us with security. Don't leave us with credit. And firm all transport arrangements at the Secretariat desk. Any missed shuttle will be on account. So if you miss your shuttle after you book just because you are disorganized, you'll have to get yourself to the airport. WRTC energy documents can also be collected in registration room at 2 p.m. today. So please take note of that. And all sponsored delegates that have not yet collected dinner allowance should report to the registration room. And what they didn't add here is that if you haven't collected it because you don't need it, please collect it and give it to the facilitator. Okay, and tomorrow's meetings, the venues are these rooms. I think there's some partitioning that is done, but it's Pandora Room 1 and Pandora Room 3. So just take note of that. There'll be signage as to which meeting is in 1 and which meeting is in 2. Please ensure that the daily registration forms are signed for accounting purposes. And youth group, please report to the SADC Secretariat room for a photo session before going for lunch. I feel marginalized. Why am I not part of this session? But anyway, those are the announcements. So, colleagues, with that, I really would like to thank you for your support. Thank you for really making this possible. As I was saying yesterday, earlier on, please make sure that also when you confirm your flights, if you came economy, confirm economy. Business, confirm business, not the other way around. Because there was a time someone boarded a plane and sat in business when he was an economy passenger. I was going to London. And our friends were coming there to say, look, sir, you don't need to sit here. You need to go to the economy because your ticket is economy. And this person says, no, no, no. I have paid and I'm going to London and I'll sit here. And another one came and said, please, sir, your ticket is economy. Please go to the back and not here. I said, no, I have paid. I'm going to London and I'll sit here. So the way things work on the plane is that the captain is called where things can't be managed. So they called the captain. And the captain came there and within 5 seconds, this person says, why didn't these people tell me? And walked back to the economy. And then these guys were saying, but Captain, what did you tell him? We explained everything. It says communication matters. So, but what did you tell him? Well, I just told him that business class is not going to London. So the person was going to London and had to go back. Colleagues, may I call upon our incoming chair, SADC, the United Republic of Tanzania, to give us both a vote of thanks and closing remarks, to send us off. United Republic of Tanzania? Yes, ma'am. Can we please give our incoming chair a round of applause?
Good afternoon. The chairman of SADC, Namibia, representative of host country South Africa, representatives of international cooperating partners, representatives of member states, SADC Secretariat, distinguished guests, all protocol observed. On behalf of Tanzania, as the incoming chair of SADC meetings, I wish to thank SADC Secretariat for convening these important dialogue sessions. Also to thank the government of South Africa for hosting this great event. Also to thank international cooperating partners and Global Water Partnership for funding, support, and arrangements for the dialogue. Also to thank all member state delegations and regional partner institutions for their active participation. Special recognition is made to the youth for their active participation as well. I urge us all as partner to work on and implement the resolutions and next step as agreed at this meeting. Joint planning and investing in strategic projects is crucial for benefit of our countries. We in Tanzania, we believe that coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, and working together is success. With these few remarks, I thank you all. And now I declare this 9th SADC multi-stakeholder water, energy and food nexus dialogue closed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. All right, so we can take a break and go for lunch. Thank you so much.